Hi, and welcome to Community Police Beat. I'm Officer Walter Kaczynski, and I'm the Community Service Officer for the town of Merrimack. My duties include working with the community on the numerous programs that the police department offers, and I'll be highlighting these programs throughout our shows. The purpose of this show is to provide to the community a forum that explains to the public their police department. We'll be covering the divisions of our department and how they serve the public. We'll also provide information about Crime Line and their Crimes of the Month. As I stated earlier, I'll be highlighting programs that the police department provides. Today we have Deputy Chief William Mulligan. Among his duties, he is the commander of the Patrol Division. He will explain what the Patrol Division is and what their functions are, and we'll be focusing on the motor vehicle aspect of patrol functions. And later we'll have Officer Tim Cannell, who will give the patrolman's perspective of motor vehicle stops. Welcome, Deputy Chief Mulligan.
Thank you, Officer Kaczynski. It's a pleasure to be here.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I've been with the Merrimack Police Department for 26 years. I was hired in 1974 as a patrolman, was subsequently promoted to patrol sergeant, patrol lieutenant, and patrol captain. In 1983, I became a patrol captain, and I took over the patrol division. In 1986, I was promoted to the rank of deputy chief, and at that time, I continued as one of my functions to be the patrol commander.
Okay, Deputy Chief, can you tell us a little bit about the patrol division and the patrol officers?
Yes, I can, Walter. We in Merrimack, we're blessed to have a very experienced patrol staff. Within the patrol division, the average years of experience are 8.5. We have patrol lieutenants who have 20 years or more on, and that runs right down into the patrol ranks. The average year for the average experience, I should say, for the total department is 12.6 years. Taken along with this is the vast majority of the officers have college degrees. We have officers with master's degrees, bachelor's degrees, and associate's degrees. And those officers who don't have degrees at this time are presently working towards them.
Okay, and patrol functions. We get a lot of people that have the perception that the police officers drive around in their patrol cars and they're just out there driving around. Can you give us some of the functions of what a patrol officer would do on a daily routine?
You know, there are so many things that an officer is doing while he's on patrol. Some are assigned beats that he's asked to do. We have a directed patrol program. If a citizen calls and asks us to go into an area because of a problem with motor vehicles, we'll send the officer over there for a specific amount of time to be involved. We also have a bike patrol unit, bicycles, that we send officers into areas to make sure that they're where cruisers can't go, such as Kids Cove and places like that. Also, we have motorcycle units that patrol the town, as well as a house check program. We also have a school reading program where the officers go into the schools and read to the children and get to know the children at a different level.
Can you explain some of the other reasons why somebody may be stopped while out driving around the town of Merrimack?
You know, often when I know someone does see a police vehicle stop with its lights on, the assumption is to think that the officer is stopping a vehicle for a traffic violation. Many times we may be assisting a disabled motor vehicle. We may be investigating a suspicious person. We may have been requested by another jurisdiction to stop and hold a vehicle for a crime that they may have committed. We may have stopped a vehicle for a theft. Many times we are stopping vehicles for traffic violations, but not in all cases.
And Merrimack is a relatively safe community, but even the patrol officers, they're going to have concerns every time they stop a motor vehicle. Can you highlight some of those concerns that an officer would have?
Yes, I can. You know, it's often said that there's no such thing as a routine traffic stop, and I think that's really true. People may recall that in the small town of Coldbrook, New Hampshire, 2 state troopers were shot and killed. In the small town of Epsom, New Hampshire, an officer was shot and killed. All these events occurred during a motor vehicle stop. Police officers are trained to be very careful as they approach vehicles, to be suspicious of what's going on in the vehicle as they approach, because the reality is until they know who they have stopped, until they understand what the total circumstances are, that officer's been trained to be very careful to protect himself against being harmed.
Keeping that in mind, do you have some suggestions that you can give to the public about what to do if they're stopped?
I think it's important that, we as police officers may stop 15 to 20 cars a day. The average citizen may be the first contact they've had with a police officer. And because of this, it's very frequently people become upset. I would ask a person, if they're stopped by a Merrimack police officer, number one, to remain in your vehicle. If you exit your vehicle, you put yourself in jeopardy, and you can endanger yourself as well as other people on the road. Remain calm. Obviously, the officer stopped you for some reason. A good example might be you start to argue that you haven't committed any violation when the officer tells you have a tail light out. If you listen and wait for his explanation, it may just be that, and you can go on. If he stopped you for a violation, he'll be asking for your license and registration. They should be in a convenient place. Give the officer your license and registration and let him explain to you why he stopped you. If you don't agree with the officer, you can ask questions, but that's not the time to argue with the officer.
Okay, and we get a lot of calls at the PD about people that were issued a DE tag or a warning. And a lot of times their question would be, why wouldn't we just get a verbal warning about our traffic infraction or our equipment that's out? Can you give a couple reasons why we would sit there and document and give out paperwork, reference the warning or the DE tag?
It's easy for an officer to stop a car and just to tell a person this is a warning and to send them on their way. But that's it. There's no record of that warning. By an officer documenting the warning, it serves two purposes. First, it puts the person on notice that there will be a record at the police department. It also allows other officers later on, if they stop that same vehicle for speeding or some other violation, to realize the person's been given a warning. Also, we issue defective equipment tags. And the officer issues that to the individual and says to have a headlight or taillight fixed. And many times people feel like, why couldn't he just tell me I'll have it fixed? And they probably would. We want to know why our officers are stopping vehicles. And if you were to call me, I'd want to know that you've been issued a piece of paper that tells you why. If you call me and say you were stopped and not given anything, I would think you have a legitimate complaint. So we want our officers to document their stops, to have a reason for stopping the people, and we also always want them to be professional and courteous when they stop you.
On receiving tickets, we also receive a lot of calls at our police department, people that either felt they were unjustly issued a ticket or they had some complaints. What are the calls that you've received, and how are they handled when they come in about a ticket that has been issued?
We probably have thousands of contacts with the public and very few complaints. But when people do call me, often they complain about the fact that the officer was polite, he was courteous, but they don't agree with the speed. That really isn't an issue for the police department at that time. That's a court issue. They've been issued a summons. That can go to the court, and the judge can make a determination based on the facts of the case if they want to testify. But if they feel the officer is rude, discourteous, or unprofessional in any way, we want them to report that. It's only through their continued efforts, but telling us how we're doing, that we can only do better. I should mention we have an appraisal program that we go out and we talk to citizens after we've been to their homes, and we ask them how the officer was. And we're looking for feedback from the community. And if someone feels they were treated unfairly or treated unprofessionally, we'd ask them to contact us. We have a full system to investigate it, and we will look into every complaint.
Another frequent call that we get at the police station is about people calling about speed limits in town. Merrimack has a posted 30-mile-an-hour speed limit unless otherwise posted. And a lot of people call and say, take for instance Babusick Lake Road, that the speed limit should be higher than 30 miles an hour because it is a main roadway going through from them for a lot of neighborhoods getting down to the main roads in town. How do you handle a situation like that, or the comments to the public when they call?
I think you're right about that. To many people in the motoring public, Turkey Hill Road, Babusick Lake Road, Wire Road, Bedford Road, are a route to get to where they're going, including Route 3, of course. But to many people on those back streets, that's their home. That's where they live. They want to be able to exit their driveways. They want to be able to walk the family dog, maybe go jogging. go for bike rides. And it's very difficult to do when people are traveling 40, 45 miles an hour to feel safe on those roadways. As a police department, I think we're responsible to help with the safety of the community. And one of the issues is the speed on those roads. And we're vigilant, we're out there, we want people to drive at a reasonable speed, and the posted speed limit is 30, and the police department's out there to support that, as well as our business districts. People should be able to go to a store, be able to exit without having vehicles driving in a excessive speed. And I think it's important that the police department is aware of that. I'll give you an example. We had a neighborhood where we had to reroute traffic off the Babusick Lake Road, and it was a neighborhood that doesn't get that kind of traffic on a regular basis. And we were getting constant calls from those people in that neighborhood about the speed of the vehicles going through the neighborhood. Well, if you lived on Babusick Lake Road, that would be a concern for you as well. There's no less safety for the people on Babusick Lake Road than there are for some of those cul-de-sac side streets. So that's a concern for us, and as a police department, I think we have to be responsive to that.
So it'd be safe to say that even Amherst Road, Turkey Hill Road, and Babusick Lake Road, even though they're main roads going through town that connect a lot to the highway, that is somebody's neighborhood.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, and at this time, I'd like to summarize some of the things that we've talked about today.
Some of the reasons for motor vehicle stops: traffic violations, defective equipment, suspicious vehicles, stop and holds for another department, disabled motor vehicles. What do you do if you're stopped by a police officer? Stay in your vehicle, stay calm, produce your license and registration, listen for the officer's explanation of why you were stopped.
Hey, Deputy Chief Mulligan, I'd like to thank you for being here today, and I think you have enlightened a lot of the topics about what a patrol division would do and some of their functions. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. And I'd like to take a moment just to thank the community for the continued support of the Merrimack Police Department. It's only through the efforts of the community that we can continue to move forward as a police department. I'd really like to thank them for their continued efforts to help us.
Thank you. Hi, now we have Officer Tim Cannell of the Merrimack Police Department. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you, Walter.
Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, my name is Tim Connell. I'm a police officer in the town of Merrimack. I started as a part-time officer in 1986, became a full-time officer in 1988, one of the firearms instructors for the department, as well as teaching officer survival to the officers.
That's great. As covered earlier, motor vehicle is one of the major functions or prime function that a patrol officer encounters on his daily routine. Can you explain, in your opinion, why motor vehicle is an important function in patrol?
Motor vehicle enforcement is important in any police department for two reasons. First, for safety in the community, whether it be for speed violations and things of that nature which can cause accidents. Secondly, people don't realize, but enforcement of motor vehicle laws helps enhance an officer's ability to detect criminal violators as well.
Okay, on a motor vehicle stop, like we said earlier, Merrimack is relatively safe community, but can you give a patrolman's perspective as far as some of the concerns that they're going to encounter when they do stop a motor vehicle?
Concerns for the officer, initially upon making a motor vehicle stop, an officer doesn't know why a person may be speeding, for example. The person may be speeding because they're running late for work, or the person may be speeding because they're fleeing from a crime. It's important for people to realize that the officers don't know what the vehicle may contain. They don't know who the operator is. They don't know the outstanding circumstances. So people have to remember, the officer's point of view, their prime concern is safety.
Among traffic stops, speeding is probably one of the primary reasons why somebody was stopped for exceeding this posted speed limits. Can you tell us about some of the frequently asked questions or misconceptions that somebody may have in relationship to speeding when you stop somebody for speeding?
Often people will ask us when they're stopped for speeding how we possibly stop them if the police car was moving. And they don't understand that moving radar is one of the technologies that we utilize, and sometimes they don't realize that.
Officer Cannell, is there any other misconceptions or frequently asked questions that somebody asks you about other traffic violations that you come across in your career?
Many people have the misconception that they have a 10-day grace period regarding their motor vehicle registration. That is not the case. There is a 10-day period after you register your vehicle. We have a 10-day window to get the vehicle inspected, and oftentimes people confuse the two. Another misconception is there's a law against avoidance of a traffic control device. This means that you cut through a private parking lot to avoid either a no left turn signal, a traffic signal such as a red light, or other traffic control device. People don't realize that it is unlawful to cut through a private parking lot to avoid that signal.
Okay, I think that's informative. In summary, can you summarize some of the stuff that's been covered today and give the patrolman's point of view in a reference of being stopped by a motor vehicle, or some of the reasons why somebody would stop, and just highlight some of them in summary?
Just like to emphasize that when you stop by the police, stay calm, stay in your vehicle, and keep your hands visible so the officer can see them. Oftentimes people will be looking for their registration or going to the glove compartment as the officer approaches the car. This is the most dangerous point in a traffic stop for the officer. So please keep your hands visible when the officer approaches the car.
Thank you very much, Officer Cannell.
Thank you, Officer Kaczynski.
At this time, I'd like to highlight one of the programs that we offer to the community in Merrimack. And the one I'm going to talk about today is the Good Morning Merrimack call. It is a program where an elderly person who's living alone would contact the Merrimack Police Department between the hours of 8 o'clock and 10 o'clock in the morning. If we don't receive a call between those hours, we'd send a patrol vehicle over to check and make sure the well-being of that person is okay for that day. If anybody wants to sign up for it, or if you have a friend or a family member that you think should be involved in this program, they can contact the Merrimack Police Department, and we'd have a form sent out or dropped off at that residence for that person to fill out, and then they could start the program. At this time, I'd also like to highlight some of the Crime Line Crimes of the Month. Merrimack Crime Line is a nonprofit organization that offers rewards for anonymous calls to the Merrimack Police Station and on a private line that's non-caller ID'd. And what would happen is if a person called in on Merrimack Crime Line, they would be issued a crime line number. They'd detail the information that they know about a crime to the person taking the report, and then they'd be asked to call back at a periodic time to identify themselves only by that crime line number, and they would sit there and they'd find out what the status of the case would be. If an arrest was made during the investigation of that crime, that person would be entitled to a cash reward that is paid off by the Merrimack Crime Line, and that ranges up to $1,000. A couple of the crimes that we'd like to highlight for this month would be a break-in that happened at the Good Time Skating Rink. On January 17th, a break-in was reported at the roller skating rink up on Daniel Webster Highway, and items were taken from the building along with a large amount of criminal mischief. A lot of things were destroyed inside the facility. We're also looking for information on an assault with a firearm. On January 30th, a shooting took place outside of 637 Daniel Webster Highway, where a 19-year-old female suffered a gunshot wound to the leg. The third area I'd like to highlight of a crime would be thefts that happen at the YMCA, and it's not just restricted to the YMCA. Over the past few weeks, we've had a lot of complaints of thefts coming out of lockers. And somebody would go into the lockers and either break the lock, or in some cases, people wouldn't lock the valuables within their locker. Anybody that have information on any of these crimes, ask to call 424-2424 and provide that information to the Merrimack Police. In closing, for today's show, I'd like to ask anybody to has any comments or questions that they'd like to see on this show to either email me at the Merrimack Police Department, or they can call the Merrimack Police Department or drop a letter off at the Merrimack Police Department. and thank you for watching the show.